Jerry, don't you know better than to make unsupported accusations like that?
Unsupported? Why, ever since Frenchie Beaumont opened up that hotel, Devil's Hole has been working...
Now, look, Jerry. Already 3 of Devil's Hole's most solid citizens have lost their lives to Frenchie in a fair gunfight. Are you aiming to be next?
You call those murders fair? Gunning them down the way he did?
Well, Lucius the neckties. He didn't shoot him in the back, did he? They was all shooting at the same time, wasn't they? Yes, sir. Facing each other, weren't they? In one of them duels that Frenchie insists on fighting?
You know, you got a break today when he just sent that vulture of his after you. That should be a lesson.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. We are your hosts, Jordan and Kumar, that's me.
And me.
And this week we are talking about Red Ryder. Actually 3 different Red Ryder movies.
That's so?
As we discussed last week, because there were 3 different actors.
3 different actors and 2 different studios?
2 different studios, 4 actors if you count the guy that was in the serials before Red Ryder.
Yes.
There were also 3 TV pilots made. I believe one might have been a backdoor pilot, but I think 2 of these had actors from the movies. And one of them had maybe a new guy. I can't remember. It was in like Gunsmoke or something. I didn't go too far.
I think Gunsmoke was where they had the backdoor pilot.
Yes. Okay.
So Red Ryder pops up in an episode of Gunsmoke.
Right. Okay. So, do we want to talk a little bit about Westerns first, or we want to get straight into Red Ryder first? And we actually had usually we have a bit of a check-in during the week, and we ended up reading different stuff.
Yes. That'll be fine. I read the dailies and you read the Sundays.
I read the Sundays. The Sundays actually came first. It started as a Sunday strip, and then the dailies came 4 months later. And I did read a bit of the dailies, and as far as I can tell, they had different storylines going in. So there wasn't like an overlap like a lot of strips have.
I wonder how different though, because it's pretty formulaic stuff.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And in fact, it's formulaic in a bad way, but at the same time, I was like, after I read the comics, I was kind of looking forward to the movies, because I thought, oh, this is a bit like Prince Valiant. This is the kind of storytelling that's kind of gone, where it's just good guys and bad guys. There's no gray. There's no betrayals or like surprising betrayals or anything like that. Or
it's not really sophisticated.
No, that's right. It's really just
black and white.
Yeah, it's westerns for kids, and.
Definitely westerns for kids. This isn't Blood Meridian.
No, well, actually, you know, getting into the westerns.
Grit,
this is what I'm thinking. So, like Searchers was 56, but the novel of Shane came out in 49. Now, this series started in 38. November of 38 was when we got our first Red Ryder. It was written and drawn by a fellow named Fred Harman Jr.
Okay.
Who had grown up on a ranch.
Yes.
Like he was a country boy.
Yep.
And I mean the horses are awesome in the strip. Every time he draws a horse, it's great. A lot of the landscapes are really pretty great for terrible newspaper coloring and printing.
The art's fine. Yeah.
All this is pretty good. So he had tried to launch his own. He tried to self-syndicate a strip. He had done a strip called Bronc Peeler, which he self-syndicated for several years, and then it kind of fell apart. He had no formal art training, but he had started several. Like he started an animation business with Walt Disney, and that failed. And then he went on. He was trying to get into art. 100%. And he had all these businesses failed, including his Bronc Peeler was failing. But he met this guy named Stephen Schlesinger.
A very interesting fellow.
Who seems to be he was like doing brand synergy before that was a thing.
He's kind of like the Mark Zuckerberg of the 1930s.
Yeah. He's
right, so he sees kind of this potential of synergizing different media to promote a single character or a single line. So he's the guy that he did not just Red Ryder. So he came up with Red Ryder, as I understand it, right?
Well, I've read this 2 different ways. So he saw Hank Harman's Bronc Peeler, and he was like, I want you to redevelop this into a different kind of strip, and then we'll make movies, we'll make toys, we'll put all the stuff, the books, the Big Little books, all that kind of stuff, the prose novels, all that stuff. We're gonna do it all at once. Yeah. But I want you to. Wikipedia says. According to Wikipedia, he came up with the idea, or it's implied that he came up with the idea and gave it to Harman, do this Western strip. But there's
what's
another.
the idea behind a Western strip? It's
Well,
going to
I
be
guess
about a
it's list
cowboy.
Yes, it's kind of the list
having
of
cowboy
characters.
adventures.
But I read this other book, which I can't find now, all about all about American cartoonists, and it said that Harman came up with, like Schlesinger said, please rework this idea, and Harman reworked it. So I don't know which one is quite.
They're similar enough that I think it doesn't really matter.
Yes,
but to return to Schlesinger, he's a pretty interesting fellow, as we said. So he's a real pioneer for kind of like this multiple marketing.
Yeah.
Putting multiple releases of your product in different media. So he would have sort of like a radio play going, as you said, prose novels, the comic strip.
There was the radio show.
Books.
It was on 3 times a week.
Yep.
Apparently.
Merchandise.
Yep.
Sort of like, in fact, today I think Red Ryder is primarily remembered now as a BB gun.
Yes. I don't think anybody knows what the origin of Red Ryder, the Daisy Red Ryder BB gun, which is famous for A Christmas Story.
That's right, yep.
Out of that. And that's
Is that why we're doing it this way?
Yeah, that's why we're doing it.
Of course it is. Of course.
That's the Christmas connection.
Yes.
So,
I mean, and that's all over the place. That's in the Fallout series of games. If you Google Red Ryder now, it is the first hit. You don't get any of these movies. You don't get the comic strip. The first hit is the BB gun.
Yeah.
Yes. And Schlesinger is the guy, he's kind of like the guy that, one of the first, a real pioneer in this kind of like uber capitalist approach to producing. And he did it not just for Red Ryder, but a bunch of other properties as well.
Winnie the Pooh?
Winnie the Pooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Also Tarzan.
Okay,
well,
right.
As producer. So apparently he did draw and write, but I mean he's real.
He's more like an agent.
Oh, but yeah, producing is his real kind of like area of expertise.
Yeah.
So I suppose we forgot to pause the podcast. We mentioned how it doesn't really matter who came up with the concept because it's just cowboys.
Yeah.
And about how formulaic the strips are.
Yeah. No, there's no.
You don't need to pause the podcast because this is very, very formulaic.
I read a full year of Sundays and watched 3 of these movies, and I'm like, there's no spoilers.
They're identical. They're all the same. It's just the same thing over and over.
So Harman worked on it for like 25 years.
Yeah.
Apparently he had no assistants or anything like that, but after he just got sick of it and then he left, he went into painting. He went into oil painting, and his son, Fred Harman III, is now running it as like he's got a museum of his stuff. And apparently, like people like John Wayne would come down there and hang out at the ranch, and John Wayne would sleep on the couch.
That's amazing.
Apparently.
Yeah, well, this used to be a big deal.
Yes.
We maybe only remember the BB gun now.
Yeah.
But this used to be a big deal.
Yes. And the other thing is apparently Fred Harman was one of only 75 white men adopted into the Navajo Nation.
I wonder why.
Yeah. But
not because of his sympathetic portrayal of Native American youth, that's for sure.
No. Yeah, I do wonder why. I did wonder that the whole... But, okay, we'll get kind of into that. So yeah, as we mentioned, I think I said The Searchers was 56. Shane came out in 49. So it's like 10 years later. Yeah. So, and the movie was 53. So, I'm thinking, I don't know how many years we get of Westerns as a romantic medium, like a romantic genre of like the Wild West. Because these stories are set in 1895-ish. Like late 1890s. Harman was born in 1902 and grew up on a ranch. So, and by the time we get to like 44, when the first movie comes out, we're only 50 years away from the Wild West. And we're like 70 years from that. Like we're even further away than the stories were originally. But I'm wondering how many years of stories do we get before we get to the point where by Shane, 1949, they're like, look, we can't do it that way anymore.
They start deconstructing
we're missing something. Yeah. And they have to start picking it apart. And even the Searchers, we got to start picking it apart.
It's hard to say because fascination with the quote-unquote Wild West, or the Old West, was ongoing even when the Wild West was contemporaneous.
Right.
So when the frontier was being settled, that's when Westerns essentially start, because you have fascination. We even have some characters in one of the films that are inspired by that.
Yeah.
Where you have a romance about the frontier and that's where men are men, that's where you pursue kind of like an exceptional life.
Yes.
There's, the Western genre starts when the West is still being settled. And I mean, and it's still going like today. I mean, there's still Western material being produced. It's
yes,
not quite
absolutely.
like its heyday, but Blood Meridian's not that old a novel.
No, and we've got more coming up on this show that are from the last 10 years.
Yep.
You know, at least 2, maybe 3.
I mean, we've started talking about the Western. I was going to save this until the end for summing up, but I might as well talk about it now. I don't know too much about the history of the Western as a genre, but when I look at it, I see certain things about it which I think are interesting. So last week I went on a little screed about how much I hate historical fiction.
Yeah.
You might remember. I look at Westerns and I don't think of a Western as historical fiction.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of... Now, you said that these stories are set in the 1890s, but one thing I think about Westerns is that they're not really set in any time at all. They're kind of timeless. Sort of, I guess, late 19th century generally. But they feel... There's never any reference to any kind of events that are going on. So there are events occurring in the late 19th century, global events, American events. There's never any reference to those. No one ever talks about no one's ever mentioned who the president is.
Yeah.
Do you notice in the film, whenever they're in a courtroom or a government office, there's a portrait of a president on the wall, but it's always George Washington.
Oh, right. Didn't notice that.
Yeah. Rather than someone like Andrew Jackson or someone from that period.
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting. And another thing is that it's placeless too.
Yeah.
Westerns almost never are set in a real place. You know, like a real city.
Yeah.
It's always that one-horse town. You know, the dusty main street, the weatherboard buildings on other side. It's always that same... I almost feel like Westerns are, of course, a genre fiction, but I almost feel they have more in common with fantasy than they do with historical fiction.
Yes. And you're always seeing some article about how stuff wasn't like it's portrayed in the movies or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
There's always, like, debunking...
Oh, yeah. That's another thing about it. It's heavily exaggerated. It was nowhere... I mean, that's the thing that you always hear, that it was nowhere near that violent, nowhere near that lawless, nowhere near that cliched.
Yeah.
But it's a genre that has some themes that are very particular to it, these themes, and are very associated with kind of American notions.
Yes, but is that post-1940 or is that...
It might well be it probably is post-1940. But as a setting, it's one that, unless we're talking about something like Shane or I don't know, Sergio Leone films, usually you kind of... Dollar store westerns tend to be about some kind of rugged individualist. Mm-hmm. And there's a problem to be solved, and it's not the sheriff that can solve the problem.
Yeah.
You know, it's only the man with the gun.
Yeah.
And these stories are very much in that model.
Yeah.
So, which is probably a good segue to talk about the
so I'll tell you a little bit about the Sundays. So the very first one is Red Ryder. He's on a horse. He sees an Indian on a horse that he's trying to tame, this wild horse. And Red Ryder's caption is his dialogue is, an Injun bronc bustin', he's sure picked himself a hoss with wild hair on it. And then this man, the Injun, is thrown from the horse, and his little kid is Little Beaver, and he says, Papa, make talk. And he says, I'll help you in the Hogan with him. And then...
Does it have the little asterisk saying that Hogan means a cabin?
No.
Okay.
No. I had a lot of times I didn't know what was going on in the strip because of the words they were using. They never say horse. They always say hoss. Every time it's H-O-S-S. But there were lots of words that came in. I was just, I don't know what he's talking about. When he said in the Hogan with, I was like, what is that? But anyway, next panel. This is panel 4, okay? The dad is dead. They're covering him with a blanket. And he says, my papa named Chief Beaver, me Little Beaver. And Red Ryder says, you're chief now. Dad's gone to the Happy Hunting Grounds. And then he says, you come with me, Little Beaver, till I can find someone to take care of you. And then Little Beaver just refuses to leave his side the rest of the strips.
Yeah.
He tries to abandon him. He's like, I got to go on this mission, Little Beaver. But Little Beaver's like, no, he either sneakily follows him, or he's like, I'm going to come with you. And then Red's like, well, I can't stop you.
So Little Beaver's like Chewbacca. You know, Red Ryder has saved his life, and now... In one of the dailies I read, Little Beaver does talk about how he owes him big life debt or something like that.
But he is supposedly now the chief of some tribe. But what happened to that? He's like, no, I'm going to take you to find someone to live with. Take him back to his tribe. He's the chief.
Nonsense. This is the guy writing this was inducted into the Navajo Nation allegedly, but this is all just the most brazen stereotypes.
So Red's big thing is he has red hair.
Yeah. And a red shirt.
And a red shirt. And I did mention that the horses are awesome and some of the landscapes are pretty great. But all the characters look like they were drawn by Rick Veitch, if you know what I'm talking about. It's really unnerving at times. I was like, did Rick Veitch draw these strips? Because they've got these kind of weird, like, wobbly, long faces. He was an artist on Swamp Thing and many, many hundreds of comics since. But he has a really interesting kind of, like, his characters always look really sweaty and, like, stressed or something. And he's got a kind of shaky line, the way he draws figures, especially. Anyway, so it was just reminding me of that a little bit. But anyway, so what happens is, immediately within the next strip, he meets this girl named Beth Wilder, and her stagecoach has been attacked by some bad guys.
Yep.
And then he tries to figure out what's going on with he goes into this town, and this town is run by this guy named Ace Hanlon. And Ace says, "Oh well, you stopped some stagecoach guys. Well, we some highwaymen. We need a gunslinger like you." And he says, "Last 5 sheriffs are arrested in Boot Hill for not listening to me. Want the job?" And he says, "I'm listening long enough to get that sheriff's badge handed over." He's handling. So he takes the sheriff's job basically on a dare, and this happens a few times in the strip. Somebody dares him to do something, and he's like, "I don't want to do that." And they're like, "Well, I dare you to," and he does it because he gets dared to do it. So basically, then he finds out that this gang is actually being run by Ace, and Ace is really rude to Little Beaver. He's like, "No Injuns on my sidewalks," and kicks him off. And immediately, Red and Little Beaver are best buds, and he always somehow they've only met like 5 minutes ago, I think, but immediately he's like, "You've got that Injun wisdom," and he's saying stuff like this all the time. And he says, "Nobody hurts my little buddy," and stuff like that. Meanwhile, this very wholesome girl, Beth Wilder, is kind of hanging around a little bit. So then, he beats these guys. Then he gets a call from his aunt, who's known as the Duchess.
Yeah.
And she's like, "I want you to come run my farm." He goes, so we get next storyline. He goes up there. He fires a bunch of no goods layabouts, and they of course revolt and try to steal the cattle. So that's a storyline.
Yep. And
Beth has come up there for some reason, and Ace Hanlon, the bad guy, had tried to frame him for robbing like the silver or something. There's a big frame-up job, but he managed to prove that he was innocent, of course, and Ace went to jail. But now Ace has escaped from jail, and he teams up with the guys that he had fired from the farm, etc. Then when that storyline ends, we get another one where this guy that's living on a nearby ranch, his son is killed and some horses are stolen. Now, my main thing is, except for a little bit with the framing, these are very straightforward. There's not a lot of twists and turns. You're not really confused. You get a little recap at the top of the Sunday strip that tells you what's happened so far. And there's nothing, I was never like, wait, who's this guy? Or where'd this guy come from? Or what does this guy want? It's like, no, these are just bad guys that are trying to steal horses. That's it.
This is a daily strip.
And
this isn't Thimble Theatre. It hasn't been plotted out weeks and months in advance.
And it's like the fights are pretty good because they're just like a panel. Like, there'll be a fist fight, just one panel, pow, knocks the guy out. Or there'll be a little bit of a shootout. It's not dragged out for, like, weeks. It's just like, we'll take care of this in 1 or 2. It looks pretty good. The horses look great. We're done. Kind of move on to the next story. And that's kind of about it. Now, what about the dailies?
Very similar, except in black and white.
Yeah.
So, again, Red Ryder will just sort of stumble from adventure to adventure, event to event. There's never any downtime because we don't have... no one wants to open up the newspaper.
There is a bit of downtime in the Sunday. I'll mention what it is.
Okay.
So after the first adventure, when his aunt calls him the Duchess, by the way, I really like her as a character. She's real fun in the strip, I find. She's
Excellent,
this feisty lady.
Yeah.
And she calls him up. She puts him to work. And then he's like, well, I'm going to retire from gunslinging. I'm hanging up my guns. I'm done. Once he's done with the cattle rustlers, the guys he fired that are trying to steal his stuff, he's like, I'm done here. And he hangs up his guns, and then that guy from the neighboring ranch, his son is killed by some horse thieves.
Someone's got to drag him back
And he shows up, and he's like, hey, I need you to help me fight these guys. He's like, I hung up my guns. And so there's 2 or 3 Sundays where he's like, I'm not going to do it. And then finally, Beth Wilder, the wholesome pretty girl, comes out and she's like, take these guns. He says, I promise Beth I'm not going to fight anymore. And she gives him his guns.
But the conflict is that this guy has to get Red Ryder out of retirement.
That's right.
So, I mean, it's not like we're seeing Red Ryder drinking cocoa in front of a fire.
No, exactly.
There's still interpersonal conflict
I think he's literally like hanging out laundry or something when this guy comes up to him. And then Beth comes out with his guns and she's like, you're going to go back out there and do what you're meant to do. And then he goes back out there.
It's just always... Like, Red Ryder's just always got to be on the move. He always has to be on his way to his next adventure.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, why am I opening the paper to read a Red Ryder comic?
Yes.
So it's very much like that in the dailies, where Red Ryder will no sooner solve, I think the first one I read, he'd gone back to his ranch had burned down. He needed to... No sooner did he put his cabin back up than people come down wanting to buy his farm, his ranch.
Yeah.
He won't sell... They dam up the river that supplies his ranch with water. He has to go ask for the water to be done. They shoot at him. He has to blow up the dam to get the water back on. And then when everything's resolved, he literally, there's a line of dialogue which is more or less like, well, no time to talk. I've got to go and meet my old pal, Colonel What's-His-Name, in Mexico to catch the notorious outlaw, Yankee Joe. Like, we haven't heard anything about this.
Yeah.
He hasn't received a telegram or
anything. Just like
he just announces that that's what's happening next.
Right.
No time for any of this. I have to go to Mexico now.
At least in the Sundays, he gets a letter from his aunt, the Duchess.
No time for that in the dailies. We just got to...
Right.
He's just this...
This did remind me, the craziness of that reminds me of the third storyline in 39 is these 2 guys want to go out to this region where they can pan for gold, but no people have ever come back from there because apparently the Indians out there kill intruders.
Yep.
And he's like, look, I'll lead you out to this certain point. Red Ryder says, I'll get you out there, whatever. And then I don't remember how he agreed to it. They might have dared him, or they might have called him Yellow. And he's like, I'm not Yellow, I'll take you out there. They go out there, and they do end up having to fight these Indians. But then the daughter of the chief is like, I'll help you. They're captured. She says, I'll help you escape if I get to marry Red Ryder. And they agree. They're like, well, this is the only way we can get out, so yes, we agree. So they agree. They go back to civilization, and they're at the church. Red Ryder's like, Beth is all heartbroken. This is another aspect of the strip. It's very chaste, and we've seen this before in other strips, but there's no romance. It's very much for 10-year-old kids that don't want to think about icky girl stuff, but they know that marriage and stuff is grown-ups get married, that kind of...
how is Red Ryder going to get out of having to marry somebody?
So now they're literally at the church, and it's like, does anybody object? And then I think little Beaver comes in, or the chief appears from the tribe, and she's... The girl, the Indian girl, is like, well, I'll go back with you, but I want to marry who I choose, not who you choose. The chief, and he says, okay, I agree. So she actually gets some agency out of this.
That's cool.
Like, she plotted this thing out to get out of having to marry
that's not a bad
someone.
Story.
Yeah, so it actually...
For the 40s.
Yeah, it was kind of, moved in a kind of... Went through... This story did kind of go through some...
Ups and downs,
or, valleys and mountains, or went through some...
Twists and turns.
Yeah. Yes, there you go.
That's not so bad.
It wasn't so bad, yes. But I will point it out, I'm going to say this again and again, it was not hard to follow at any stage. I never didn't know what this guy was trying to do or who this person was or anything like that at any stage reading any of these, even if it went on for like 10 or 12 weeks.
Unlike the movies, say.
Unlike the movies. Okay, so I think we can get right into our first movie. So, I did say, the first movie which came out in 1944 was called Tucson Raiders, and it's not on YouTube, so we decided we're going to do the second one, which is the first available one. I actually did find it during the week. I found it on another site.
Brilliant.
And I will talk about it a little bit.
Please.
When we get around to it. I didn't watch it, but I picked up some interesting facts from it, which we'll come back around to. So each of these things is about 55 minutes long. They're B movies. So I think you figured this out, right? So B movie would show second?
Yes. So usually when there was a double feature, the exciting film would go first.
Okay.
And then you would have the less exciting film, the less good film, which, like a record, B-side, where that's the single is on one side, and on B-side you have just whatever song to take up space. Same thing with the double feature. You'd have the headliner, and then you would have the B movie.
So it's a bit like, it's the opposite of going to a concert, where you have the support act first, and then the main event.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe they had shorts or something first. I just can't understand the logic of having people walk out of the theater after the first feature. I don't know. Okay, anyway.
That's the origin of it. It's the same as B-sides.
Yeah, so I just wanted to point out that 1944, when the first of these comes out, starring Bill Elliott as Red Ryder, 1944 also saw Arsenic and Old Lace, Double Indemnity. These are stone cold classics.
Yeah.
Gaslight, which has entered common parlance.
It absolutely has.
All these movies came out in 44. By 46, we've got The Big Sleep.
So good movies are coming out, but this is a different time. There's no television in these days.
That's right.
And people are going to the movies every week.
Yeah.
So, in fact, there are more movies being released in this time than there are now. And that's even with things like Netflix and various streaming services and the movie studios. Movie studios were releasing like 50 movies a year.
Yeah.
Something like Harold Teen, it was really rough around the edges because they're just getting it out.
Yeah.
They're just
we
getting
got
it out
27 of these Red Ryder movies between 44 and 52. Sorry, 44 and 49.
That's
so 5 years.
Significantly more than one a year.
Yeah, they're doing a lot a year.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you say they go every week, because one of the crazy things I discovered about Tucson Raiders versus Marshal of Reno, which is the second movie, we watched Marshal of Reno, is that the same guy plays the villain in both movies and he's different characters.
Great.
And I'm like, wait, if you went to see this one a month ago and you come back, you're like looking at the same actor dressed the same way, and he hasn't changed his acting or anything, he's not in disguise, or it's a very odd thing.
Yeah, but they just need to get it out there.
Yeah.
They just need to get it out and get the people into the cinema so they can make their money.
Right, so these came out from Republic. Republic also put out the serial that preceded these. They did, so Bill Elliott did 16, and then Allan Lane did 7, so that's, 23 movies came from Republic. Then it went over to Eagle Lion Pictures, and they tried to keep it going with 4, starring this guy, Jim Bannon. By the way, they all have cowboy names in their title cards. So like Wild Bill Elliott and Jim Red Bannon or something like that. The guy that plays this character, Gabby, actually has Gabby in his name, in his actor name.
The guy that plays the final Little Beaver is called Little Brown Jug.
Yes, but his real name was Don Reynolds.
You also went down that rabbit hole.
I was like, how can this guy's name be Little Brown Jug? I didn't buy it for a second.
He's a really interesting guy. Did you read about his life?
No. Tell me about it.
Fascinating guy. So his father was a animal trainer and showman who would do animal shows.
Okay.
And he had Little Brown Jug, Don Reynolds, appearing in his show from the age of 2.
Okay, right.
On like a little pony. And this guy basically grew up in the saddle. I mean, he's been hired for this because he knows how to ride horses.
He walks on the backs of horses.
Yeah.
In his movie, in the one that we watched, we'll get to that. But yeah, when he's walking across, like there's big horses in a row, and he'll just walk across their backs. It was wild.
He really knew what he was doing. He was a child actor. He was in about a dozen films, and then he retired and sort of went into animal training full time. Then later in life, from about the late 80s onwards, he ended up training animals for cinema. So he got back into cinema, but not in front of the camera, now behind the camera, training the animals. His very last job, for which he spent a year in New Zealand, was the Fellowship of the Ring. For which he trained Shadowfax.
Right.
The white horse that Gandalf rides.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Both the one Ian McKellen rode and the one that the stuntman rode.
Okay.
2 white horses.
Yeah, right.
He passed away very recently, 2019.
Huh, interesting. Okay, so I said the number of, we had that many movies. Republic, Eagle, Lion, tried to make 4. Then we had the 3 TV pilots, etc., etc. So we started with Marshal of Reno, which was the second movie, came out in 44. It opens with Red Ryder and Gabby out of a storybook. They step out of not out of a comic book, a storybook. But we do get a title card which says based on Fred Harman's famous NEA comic. NEA was Newspaper Enterprise Association. So that credit is right there at the beginning. But for some reason they've tried to tell us that there's a storybook character.
It's just Schlesinger's multi-level marketing.
I guess, yeah. He's like, promoting... so you're right, because he has mentioned the comic and the books in the movie.
Yeah.
So it's like, buy all these things.
Yeah.
You're right. You're absolutely right. So I guess that's the way he was thinking. And as we mentioned, Bill Elliott is credited as Wild Bill Elliott. Little Beaver is played by a young Robert Blake.
Yeah.
in these 23 Republic movies. I don't know what to say about that exactly, but it's odd. He's a child. He's a little kid.
You'll have to explain who Robert Blake is.
Well, he was a star. He went on to star in his cop show Beretta in the 70s, and then famously went on trial for murdering his wife in the early 2000s. After being in David Lynch's Lost Highway in the late 90s, that was kind of his comeback of sorts. And then he went on trial. He was found not guilty in the criminal trial, but in the civil trial he was found culpable, much like O.J. was. Yeah. But also reminded me that the kid who played Daigoro in Lone Wolf and Cub grew up and then killed somebody.
Oh no, that's a dark side comic book movie, Oblivion.
Yeah, so there's something.
Watch any child actors.
There's a connect the dots going on there.
Watch out for that little kid that played a robot in the Astro Boy movie.
Yeah. So 1890, we get a title card that says Blue Springs 1895. I don't think Blue Springs was in the comic. I think the locations were.
So we actually
different.
do get a year. That's interesting.
Yeah. Red Ryder's hanging out with this guy Gabby, who is this real country bumpkin type who's completely unintelligible, and we get a character of this type in all three versions that we're talking about today.
Apparently,
and they're not all Gabby for some reason.
No, Buckskin. He's
Buckskin in the third one. Oh, is he in the second one as well? Is he Buckskin?
Yes, I think Buckskin seems to be a character that appeared in the comics. So it didn't pop up when I was reading it. Maybe it can.
No, and I thought it was going to be the guy from the neighboring ranch whose son was killed, but it's not him either. He had a different name because I went back.
He's just this kooky. He's a kooky old prospector.
But in all three, you can't. I cannot understand what he has that prospector voice, and you don't know what he's talking about. All the time, it's like, oh wow,
that's pretty good,
it's very hard to deal with. In the third one, the third version, he's a really bumbling clown. Pratfalls that are supposed to be funny. We know they're supposed to be funny because every time he has a pratfall, everybody else laughs.
Yeah. By that point, he's undergone that. We're getting to the end of the run there, isn't it? It's like the 38th movie. So he's undergone that process of Flanderization, where he's become more like himself over time.
Right.
More ridiculous, more bumbling, more stupid.
Yeah. So this story involves bumbling Easterners. Okay, so hang on. There's a shoot. It starts with a stagecoach has been attacked. They're like, okay, Red Ryder, go find the guys who did it. Red Ryder, Gabby, and Little Beaver ride out. But meanwhile, the bad guys find these bumbling Easterners, these
two boys from Vermont,
greenhorns from Vermont, and they're like, "Hey, you kids, we're gonna swap clothes and swap horses," and they swap horses at least,
and guns.
So then when the posse, the lynch mob, shows up to find the people who attacked the stagecoach, they're like, those are the horses, those are the guns, and they
get ready to string them up.
Yeah, well, they kill one of the kids secretly. They take him behind a rock. And one of them gets killed by one of the lynch mob, and they're about to kill the other one.
It's confusing what's going on, isn't it?
Yes.
So one of the posse seems well-intentioned, but they're really interested in kind of like vigilante justice. They're ready to string up both the boys right away.
Yeah, it's hilarious because the sheriff's there with them, and he's like, well, I can't let you do this. And it's delivered very casual, and they're like, no, we're going to do this. He's like, well, I can't stop you.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. There's no emotion, and even when they're about to hang this guy, and then Red Ryder shoots shoots the rope, and just as he's about to hang. By the way, he does this all the time. He shoots guns out of hands very easily. Nobody's hands are injured or anything.
In this film, everyone's doing it.
Everyone does. Yes.
Like in the later ones, it's just Red Ryder that's doing it. But in this one in particular, Marshal of Reno, everyone's doing it.
Yes.
Even people that aren't particularly good. It's
you wouldn't think they'd be
way.
Crack shots, but they are. I'll just shoot that gun out of the guy's hands.
We just need a way to advance the scene when people have guns drawn. So just anyone can shoot a gun out of anyone's hand.
So he shoots this guy down. He's like, Red Ryder's like, you were going to you were going to hang this man with no justice. And they're just like, well, okay, sorry, we did that. We were going to do that. But there's almost no reaction from the sheriff,
that's because
who's present, or the mob. They're just like...
That's the theme of this. You can't rely on authority. You can only rely on...
I think it's more you can't rely on acting or showing emotions or something.
Yes. But, I mean, the sheriff has a line... Yeah, you're right. He's not a great actor. But the sheriff has a line where he just says, Red Ryder's like, you just let him run all over you. And he's like, yeah, well, I sure do. I couldn't really do anything to stop them. Yep. He's like, you're the sheriff. But you can't rely... The only thing that can stop a bad guy is Red Ryder.
Right.
Not the duly authorized authority.
Now, we get into So now we find out there's this whole plot for this town, Blue Springs, or the neighboring town, to become the county seat.
Yes.
This whole plot enters,
like this.
and there's some.
Like this.
It seems like that stagecoach attack was staged by this guy who wants crime to flourish in Blue Springs so that it won't get chosen as a county seat, and his town will get chosen as a county seat. Red Ryder has to go undercover. He goes into like Donnie Brasco level undercover in this movie, and he goes out and he's literally killing innocent people with this mob.
Well, he's pretending to kill them. There is a line of dialogue at the end.
No, those people are alive?
Yeah, they're alive. Presumably he's shooting blanks or shooting the
I did not hear that.
There is a line at the end. But you're right. Like Red Ryder does kill people in this movie.
Yes,
not that he doesn't assassinate people. The people he's being paid to assassinate. Yes. But he just randomly shoots.
I would say, the strip is pretty violent. Like, not quite Dick Tracy levels of gore and violence, but people do get killed by arrows and stuff.
Yes. But Red Ryder seldomly does any killing. In fact, apparently it was a selling point for Red Ryder was that, like Batman, he seldomly kills.
Well, how did I miss that line? Because the whole movie because what I was shocked by was when he killed these guys, his thing was like, don't worry, we're going to pin it on the bad guys. And I was like, wait a second, you still killed those innocent people, you're going to pin it on the bad guys?
Oh, you know why you didn't get it? It was the prospector, the old prospector guy that delivered it.
Oh, that explains it. Okay.
I must have had more luck.
I have to say, part of it is, YouTube sound quality. And I turned on the auto-generated subs. Every time they talked to Little Beaver, it would be Little Bieber. Like Little Justin Bieber. Every time.
I want to talk about Little Beaver. I did things in the reverse order this week. I watched the films first, or at least I watched the first 2 black and white films first before I read the comic, who have Little Beaver. So it's in black and white, but Little Beaver is clearly not Native American.
Yeah.
He's a white kid.
Yeah.
Wearing what looks like a Halloween costume.
Yeah.
And remember, I watched the film first.
Yeah.
So I went, he's clearly like a local boy.
Right.
Who's just really likes Indians.
Right.
And that's why he has an American accent and he's saying this ridiculous patois.
Yes, that pidgin English, that meat.
Take 'em, me, catch 'em. And I'm like, he's just, like, obviously, that's kind of offensive. But not too bad, because he's clearly like a white kid who's...
Remember I made this mistake with Vault of Horror, where I thought the Indian lady... I thought the British lady was... I thought she was just a British lady, not supposed to be an Indian lady or something like that. Yeah.
But then, of course, I read the comic, and I was like, oh no,
yeah.
He was meant to be Native American all along.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really bad.
It's really bad because... there's layers to this, but my thing is he speaks that dumb pidgin English, but his accent is completely normal.
Yeah.
The pidgin English came from movies in the first place. It was not.
No one talked.
But the thing is, there's a scene I think in the second or the third one, the one with the newspaper plot, where they come into the newspaper office and Little Beaver is the one who picks up the paper and reads the headline. Yeah. So he's literate. Yeah. So this kid, I don't even know if those other guys in the room are literate. So I'm like, this kid is, if he's smart enough to read, he's smart enough to know it's not me catch 'em bad guys. You know what I mean? Like his language would be better at this stage.
That's right. I thought he was just a kid putting
even the headband is apparently from movies. It's from Western movies.
I believe it.
Because apparently it was to keep the actors' wigs on.
Amazing.
That's why the headbands, you always see Indians wearing headbands. So when you see him wearing a headband, even in the comic strip, I'm like, well, he doesn't really need to have that headband there, because that's a drawing of a kid. That's not a person.
It's become what we expect to see when we watch a Western with Indian characters in it. They should have that headband with the feathers sticking out. But then, of course, I read the comic, and then I saw the third one in colour, where Little Brown Jug is actually, he's brown as a nut, this kid.
That kid is very brown. And I was almost like, is he...
Maybe that's why it's called Little Brown Jug?
Apparently, I don't know. When I saw that, I thought, did they get a real native kid?
Don't know.
But I immediately was suspicious. I was like, this is... Because I know nobody's using their actual names. The actors aren't using their names. But... apparently, the radio series Little Beaver was played by native kids.
I saw that too.
But, again, should we trust those names on there, or were those made-up names?
Or they're like Grey Owl, or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know.
The fake Indian.
Yeah.
Oh, that's tough to say.
But it does say, like, you just go on Wikipedia, it tells you the names of the actors, says they were native kids or whatever, but you can't click on the names. There's no links to see if those people were real.
Subject for another day.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so there's this whole plot where Red's gone undercover to try to prove that this guy is a bad guy that's running these mobs. So he's going out killing people for the mob, apparently not killing the people. And then, meanwhile, so Danny, the kid from the city whose friend was killed, from Vermont, he is out for blood. He wants to kill the bad guy. He wants a lynch mob.
He wants to find the guy in the posse that killed his friend.
That's right.
He knows one of them did it, but he's not too fussed if he has to kill everybody. And he's made this publicly known. So there's sort of a subplot where he's sort of wandering around trying to keep his nose clean, but everyone blames him for anything that goes wrong because he's stood up in public and said...
they're specifically, the bad guys are like, well, we can frame him for all this stuff, all the bad stuff that's happening, because people know that he's out gunning for revenge.
Oh, and there's one more thing. Even though Red Ryder is doing this scheme, he's usually got a scheme.
Yeah.
But what's happened is he's also put his trust in the wrong person.
Yes.
Which happens again and again. He hasn't cottoned on that. I think it's the newspaper proprietor. There's always a newspaper.
Yeah.
So I think in the other town, the guy that runs the newspaper and is printing the crime statistics, the inflated fake crime statistics, is actually the bad guy who's in charge of everything.
Right.
And Red Ryder is, I think, maybe reveals the plot to him at some point, or trusts him, puts his trust in him, and mistakenly, as it turns out. And then they have him tied up.
Well, yeah, there's scenes where, like, he's undercover in the next town. So when somebody from Blue Springs shows up, they recognize him. They're like, that's Red Ryder. And he's going by, he says, I'm a Marshal from Reno or whatever he says.
Right. Yeah.
And they're like, oh, then he's busted. Like, he hasn't thought these plots through. He's not wearing a disguise or anything.
No,
he's just
not very smart.
No.
Which is, I don't know if it's deliberate. It seems to be deliberate, I suppose, because maybe smartness is not really very trustworthy. He'll usually have a plan, but it'll be a bit half-baked and will often be foiled by some sort of slimy, intelligent guy.
Yes. And then...
Who's usually in a position of authority.
Yeah, so then he has to... Danny's out there shooting, I guess, threatening to shoot... I can't remember how this happens, but... Danny's hiding behind a rock, shooting at people or something. Red starts walking up there. He's just shooting at him and missing. He's like hitting his feet. And when Red's got no reaction to being shot at whatsoever, he's just wandering, moseying on up there.
Yeah.
And,
moseying on up.
And then they somehow managed to prove that the posse killed his buddy, like, deliberately, like in cold blood. And that's kind of it.
Yeah, it just sort of ends.
Yeah, so it's 55 minutes long. Duchess is in it, I will mention. She's not as fun as Duchess in the comic strips. She's not like that feisty lady.
No, not in this one.
She
anyway.
gets in arguments with Gabby all the time about him being stupid and her being fat. That's the just constant back and forth.
Yeah.
And it's not clever or fun. It's supposed to be. And that's kind of that.
And as you pointed out, it's kind of really hard to follow what's going on.
Yes, the plot was... I was getting lost because when Red Ryder goes undercover, we get this poker scene, and I'm just like, what's going on? Like, he's playing poker with these guys, and then he gets in a fight, and I guess then we learn he's trying to prove he's a bad tough
dude.
guy.
It's hard to keep track of who's who.
Yes.
And also you have to know the formula, I think. And after watching 3 of them, I could see how a person could go and watch a Red Ryder film and sort of turn their mind off.
Right.
As it goes through the motions.
Yes.
As it were. This guy is a local boss. He must be bad.
Yeah, right.
This first scheme of Riders isn't going to go too well.
Right.
But when you're watching it for the first time, it's like, what is going on?
Yes.
Who is this person?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the second one's like that too.
And as I said, that bad guy was the same guy. The same actor was the bad guy in Tucson Raiders. So what's going on there? Okay, so our next one is Stagecoach to Denver. So this is the first Allan Lane one. So this one is 1947. So we're a few years into the formula. Where this is movie number 17. So we've got our Val Kilmer suddenly steps into the role.
Yeah. Right.
We've got a new Duchess as well, a younger actress who's even less fun than Duchess number 1, who was at least an old lady. A thing I noticed was that as each of these new actors comes in to play Red Ryder, each one is smilier than the last. Now, the first, Bill Elliott he had some smiley moments, but then he would be serious. This Allan Lane has more smiley moments where he's like, well, this is fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
And again, there's a lot of scheming. So this one, we've opened a new stagecoach, and the land commissioner is riding on it. It's a new stagecoach to Denver, which is owned by Duchess.
Yes.
And it gets attacked because they want to kill the land commissioner and replace him with their own land commissioner,
Pretty
the
much
bad guys, because they want to redraw the surveying
It's not that
lines.
straightforward, though.
No.
That's what the synopsis says.
Took me a very long time to figure all this out.
But actually, the land commissioner dying is an accident that they take advantage of. It wasn't even the
okay.
but
Jesus. Okay. Yeah.
But it's just so you just have no. Yeah, it's the land commissioner dies. The local.
There was a kid on this coach as well. It's a little kid named Dickie that was being transported. His parents had died, and he was being sent to live with his aunt in Denver.
Yeah.
Now because of the accident, his back's been broken, and they need to operate, but it might be fatal. So they need permission from the nearest living relative, which is the aunt in Denver. So they call her, and they're like, "You need to come down here and give us permission."
Yes, they wire her with those details, and then the land commissioner and the aunt are coming.
The new land commissioner.
The new land commissioner coming, and the local gang, who's headed by, I think they're headed by the guy that owns the coaches. So it's not Duchess does own coaches, but now she has a new rival who's this.
Well, she's the new rival. He's had his line.
Okay.
She has the new.
It's hard to tell, isn't it?
Line to Denver. Yes.
He uses his old. Okay, that makes sense actually, because he's been using the fact that he runs a coach service to commit nefarious acts. To like seize the mail or cause accidents where it suits him.
Okay.
So he holds up the coach. He has the aunt and the land commissioner bundled off to a hut, a hogan, somewhere. And
we don't know that until the end. I was like, what happened to the lady in the carriage? What happened to the aunt?
There is a line, I hate to say it, there is a line in the middle where he says they're somewhere under guard.
I think
But everyone's talking all the time.
Yeah.
Except when they're riding horses and shooting off their guns, which they're doing the rest of the time.
There's a lot of fist fighting happening. By the way, the stuntman, it's really obvious stuntman. Anytime you get a fist fight,
in this one,
it gets worse and worse.
There's a really hard cut from he's called Big Bill.
Okay.
I think the guy that owns the coaches. And he's like a slightly older, slightly stouter fellow.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the fight starts, he just switches out for a much younger, much thinner man. It's
it happens again and again.
Obvious.
Yeah.
Anyway, he has two local toughs.
Yeah.
One of whom is a woman, put in the coach to pretend to be the land commissioner and the aunt.
Yes.
Because they're expecting the aunt, and they won't accept the phony land commissioner unless there's an aunt to go.
So this woman that comes in with them, the bad girl, the femme fatale, let's call her. She's actually very wholesome.
Well, she becomes wholesome. So
she becomes wholesome. Yes.
She's tough. She undergoes that kind of classic. I mean, it's a bit sexist, really, but she discovers that she's maternal.
Yeah, well, she's almost a Beth Wilder type, like the Beth Wilder.
Okay.
From the comics, but she's not Beth Wilder. She's another character. But the reason I want to point this out is because the actress, Peggy Stewart, is in this, and she's in Ryder Ride as a different character.
I didn't even notice.
Yes. She's the sister of the newspaper guy. She's the actual publisher of the newspaper.
Of course she is.
It's the same actress.
I didn't even notice.
And she was in Tucson Raiders as a different character. So she was with all three Red Riders playing different characters, and we only covered two because we couldn't find Tucson Raiders, but she deserves all-star status.
Oh, you're right.
Because she's in 3 comic movies, except one that we skipped because we couldn't find it at the time.
As far as I'm concerned, she's a full all-star.
Yeah.
Amazing. I did not even.
Yeah, three different characters. She did a lot of like B westerns. This was her bag, so just brought it back. She just had that look, right? She had that wholesome look about her. So
we have to go to pains to establish that she's a rougher customer.
Yes.
So she's smoking.
Yes.
She's with this. She's sort of gruff.
The bad guy calls her beautiful all the time. Beautiful when she walks in. And I went on to IMDb. I was like, what is this character's name? It just lists beautiful. Because she's never referred to by any other name.
Because she's the fake aunt, and we never get her name.
She's a fake aunt. We never get a real name.
Well, she wasn't told, or they didn't... Well, presumably they didn't know. They just knew that the aunt was coming.
Yeah.
They didn't know the purpose. So when she arrives and realizes that she has to make a decision about whether or not this boy has the life-saving, life-threatening surgery to restore the use of his legs, she's kind of horrified. So I didn't sign up for that. I have to put the life of a kid in my hands. Will I get tried for murder if he dies during the surgery because I'm not actually his aunt? She doesn't really want a bar of it. So she starts trying to extricate herself. She discovers a conscience.
Yeah.
First of all, she's afraid of her own skin because she doesn't want to... She's afraid for her own skin because she doesn't want to get sentenced to murder or manslaughter. But as time goes on and she discovers those feminine qualities which she'd repressed to be a bad guy, she starts to really like the kid.
Yeah.
And she keeps trying to get a doctor sent from Denver.
Yes.
Dr. Cooper. And Big Bill, the guy that runs the carriage service and who's the evil authority figure in this particular story, he just doesn't understand what's going on. He's like, why do you keep trying to get the doctor? Why are you doing this? This is a scam.
Yeah.
Why am I paying for this doctor?
Yeah.
So he keeps trying to get her killed.
Yes. By the way, there's a gunfight at a telegraph office in this movie, which is crazy. Red Ryder comes into the office and he's shooting out the window at people that are hiding in the bushes or whatever, because they're trying to take down the lines before he can send a message to Denver or whatever. And the telegraph operator is in the room, and he just has no reaction to the gunfight. There's literally a guy shooting a pistol outside his window. They're shooting at each other. Bullets are coming his way, and he's just like, do-do-do-do-do.
He's just, he's so well trained. He's like a mentat. He's just so well trained. He's focused on that telegraph.
Yeah. You better ring the bell for that.
Ding ding.
Yeah.
Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, that was great. So here's one thing I really didn't like in this movie is, and it gets worse and worse in different ways. There's some shots where Beautiful is on the coach. She's driving a coach, and it's shot with rear projection.
Yeah.
And the long shots are fine. It's just her, or maybe a stunt woman or a stunt man, driving on the coach through the plains. But in the close-up shots, it's rear projection. I'm like, you read these comics, that's one of the nice things about the comics is the landscapes. And to have a rear projection shot that looks...
It really stood out in this one, I agree, because one of the good things, I suppose one of the few good things about these movies is that there's some really good outdoor sequences.
Yeah.
Like, they've got their horses, they've got their actors that know how to ride them, and they're willing to do it. So they've got people just thundering around on horses.
There's one of those things that's always amazes me in a movie is when a person jumps onto a horse while it's in motion, and they do that.
Yes, they do that.
And to me, that's a stunt. Like, I don't know
they cut
how
away.
hard
I don't think
it
it's
is.
the actor, because they do cut to a long shot.
Right,
But it's still super impressive.
Yeah.
Like the horses, it's when it's in this one where he's been arrested, right? And Red's been arrested, and they fake bust him out. They give him a fake note from Buckskin.
Yeah.
Which, again, it's hard to tell what's going on. I had to pause it and sort of think about it. But they leave a note on the window of the jail, and it has a key in it, and a note from Buckskin, and the note says, I got the key out the sheriff's desk. You got it. And it's that gambit where you want to shoot them while they're trying to escape. So the Big Bill and one of his henchmen are waiting outside the jail for Red Ryder to come out so they can shoot him. Yes. It took me a while to figure out what was going on.
Yes.
And but Red Ryder outsmarts them because he calls for his horse, whistles for his horse, Thunder, which runs past at full tilt, and then the stuntman gets on it as it's galloping past him, and it's super impressive.
Yeah.
Which, as you say, just makes it frustrating that they had this back-projected sequence when you have maybe this all-star who acted in so many westerns didn't know how to drive a coach.
No, I don't think they could get another coach and close up to get the shot.
No Steadicam in those days.
No Steadicam.
Good
By the
point.
way, I just looked up on IMDb, and Buckskin he's not Buckskin, he's Coonskin in this one.
Oh, so there are three different.
There are three different guys. You all talk like this all the time. There are three the same guy, different names.
This is the crazy old prospector.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is the property that originated that character.
I really
because you
don't
just see
know.
him again and again.
By the way,
he's always got a beard and a floppy hat.
Yes. He's basically. Why didn't they use the guy? I don't know. By the way, you mentioned an interesting thing, which is that Little Beaver, who's usually very helpful in the comic in getting Red Ryder out of scrapes or warning him of danger, almost never in these movies. He's just there as like a... He's just a sidekick.
You just expect him to be there, I suppose. So
he doesn't. I think he helps him get out of jail in one of them, maybe the first one or something. Or he helps him. He rescues him when he's tied up, when he's been when his cover's been blown and he's captured and he's tied up. He does help him out there, but otherwise,
when I was watching the film first, he feels sort of like just a mascot that they keep around.
Yeah, exactly.
Not his bosom. Not his blood brother that he saved from death.
Yeah.
And who's his kind of like Boy Friday or Tonto kind of character.
Yeah.
No, it's just like some kid that likes to dress up like an idiot. I honestly preferred that take.
Yes, I agree. That would have been
a little more PC at the very least.
So yeah, at the end of this, there's a big shootout, and I think Beautiful picks up the little boy Dickie that's about to have that needs the operation, and turns her back to the gunman and gets shot in the back, saving Dickie and sacrificing herself in the process.
Tying up that story.
Yeah.
So she sacrifices herself to save his life,
and
she dies conveniently.
Yeah.
And then they rescue the aunt, who's been tied up with a gag for the last few days.
Yeah, what was her life like?
Yeah, it must have
tied
been
up for
great.
days.
Can't have been great. And also, the land commissioner's nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
What happened to him?
What happened to him? Yeah, exactly. Okay, so then we get to 1949, so we get 4 more movies, this time starring Jim Bannon. Now we've moved into color.
Yeah, so we can finally see his red hair and his red shirt.
Red hair, red shirt. I was like, great. But in the horse chases, which were kind of a good thing about these movies, they keep riding past the same tree over and over again. Sometimes they reuse shots, like in Tommy Wiseau's The Room. They reuse the same shots. Like the posse will be watching something happening, and then they'll blow up a building half an hour later in the movie, and you'll get the same shot of them standing in the bushes watching.
This is the dregs. They've just they've had enough, haven't they? They're just...
I don't know, it's a new... You know what, it reminds me a bit of when Cannon took over the Superman franchise and made Superman 4. It's like, well, this franchise is dead, but we're gonna make some money out of it, and you know, think about how careful Warner Brothers was about the Superman property when Superman 1 was coming out, as you mentioned.
Yep.
And by Superman 4, they're like, here, Cannon, you can make a movie.
Just wring the last few drops out of it.
And it's like, what was happening with Schlesinger here, that he was like, there seemed to be he was just worried about the brand identity or what? I don't know what was going on, but yes, the color is impressive when you first see it, but then when you see them start reusing shots and riding past the same trees again and again, which, as I said, is... You know, a thing in the comic is a good thing, is the way he draws the landscapes. At least, if there's one thing you're going to get out of it, and then to come into this, and it's just like repetitive, and this one is really stretched out. I mean, they're all 55 minutes, but this one's
10 minutes longer.
Fights are really, like, fist fights go on and on. Very long fist fights, very long chases. Yeah. They just go on and repeating.
That little beaver, little brown jug, the guy that plays Little Beaver, he sure can ride.
Yes.
Whenever he was riding around, I was, this is really impressive.
Yeah.
This kid's got to be like 10.
Yeah, that is true.
He's riding around with all these grown-ups. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, Buckskin, no longer Coonskin, Buckskin is very clumsy in this one.
Yeah, it's been ratcheted up to 11 now. He falls over constantly. There's what felt like a sequence. So this film's 55... actually, this film's like an hour long, 57 minutes long. And there's a sequence where Buckskin gets his hand stuck on some sticky newspaper that goes on for, I think, about 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's hard work, really hard work. Why was his hand even stuck on the newspaper?
I don't know.
We never got a close-up, right?
And it just keeps going and going, and they're all just laughing at him, and it just keeps going.
Yes,
going.
There's a lot of sitcom-like characters laughing at each other. Or at him, because he's the comic relief.
Yeah.
Again, we can't understand
him. He's always gurning as well. Like,
yes.
In this one especially, he's sticking his tongue out, hanging his head over a door and poking his tongue out, and he falls down at one point, and we are treated to another week-long segment where he's trying to stand up.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. We had another Duchess. Our third Duchess.
This one's a bit better, I thought. She was a bit more sassy.
Yes, you want that sass. She was better than the second one. The second one was the weakest one, but maybe that was just that particular picture didn't have much for her to do in it.
Yeah. In this one, she actually pulls a gun on Buckskin.
Yes. She pulls a gun on a man. An innocent man. Just for being annoying.
Yeah, for saying that Red Ryder wasn't as an impressive a figure as Wild Bill Hickok.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that was crazy.
So the plot here is that there is a guy called Frenchie who runs the Parisian saloon.
Yes, it's called the Parisian. It's called the Parisian?
It's called the Parisian.
He's from New Orleans.
Yes.
He does a very bad accent. That actor does a very bad...
Just make him called Frenchie because he runs a hotel called the Parisian.
That would be
Don't
enough.
give him a French accent.
Yeah.
Don't make him from New Orleans. But it's part of it that he's a sort of like, he's a greasy sophisticate.
Well, he lets, like, gunslingers are staying there.
Yeah.
And he basically, they're wanted men. We learn later, they're wanted men who he allows to stay there, but in return, he charges very high prices, and they have to do his dirty work for him.
So he has them out doing holding up stagecoaches, and that's how the film starts. Another stagecoach chase, which I think all three movies basically began with.
Yes.
And everyone's just shooting off their guns constantly. And there's a local newspaper which is run by Beautiful in a different role in this one.
Yes.
And her hot-tempered brother, who she doesn't let do anything.
Yes. So she's the owner.
Yes.
Or
she's
publisher.
the owner.
She's inherited. She's inherited the newspaper from her father or something like that. Yeah.
And because she can't have set it up herself, because she's a woman, she has to inherit it from someone. But she's sufficiently hard-nosed that she runs it. And her brother is a hot-tempered bit of an idiot. Anyway, she goes away one day, and the brother's left in charge of the newspaper, which is unwise because he prints an editorial calling out Frenchie.
He's very annoyed. He's very offended by Frenchie's presence in town running this shady hotel.
And he's causing all kinds of trouble, but you can't call out Frenchie because if you do, he'll challenge you to a duel. Yeah. And he always
he's won like 5 duels in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah. He always wins. Also, they have no proof that Frenchie's a bad guy running a bad hotel.
Right. Yeah, they
so
don't
it's libel.
Libel.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so so instead he publishes an editorial with some innuendo in it. It says something about the hotel being full of gunslingers and says why they should all take French leave. I had to Google French leave.
Me too. Yeah.
Did you want to explain what it means?
Well, I think it just means leave without notification. It's when you take off without notifying.
Yeah.
But I didn't mind having to look it up because it was like a bit like the experience of reading a comic where there were a lot of words that I didn't know. So I was like, well, okay.
I didn't mind. It was a new one for me.
Yeah.
Apparently the French call it English leave.
Yeah. I believe
Did you see that?
I didn't see that. But, so...
as a consequence, Frenchie calls him out. They go out to Hangman's Oak.
Yeah.
And Frenchie shoots him dead.
And then there's a crime spree. So somehow, I guess because the publisher's brother has been killed now...
He's feeling newly emboldened. So he sent his guys out to do some
I don't quite get the logic of this, but yeah, now we have a crime spree. We get the repeated shots of stuff. There's lots of explosions and spectacle in this movie. Actually, they're using the color for sure.
There's a big fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, things are blowing up.
Yeah.
And Red Ryder... Interestingly, unlike the comics, Red Ryder doesn't have to be convinced to do stuff generally in the films.
No, they don't have to dare him or call him yellow. Yeah.
He's very much a moral figure.
But he's reluctant to do anything about Frenchie because duels are legal. This was fascinating to me. He's like, these are all legal, above board duels. There's nothing we can do about it.
He's very particular too.
And the brother's like, this is legalized murder. And it's like, well, it's legal. And Red Ryder's like, it's legal. We can't do anything about it.
I don't know if deals were ever legal, but I didn't bother to look it up. But Red Ryder, there's some real rules lawyering going on here.
Yeah.
He goes, well, there's nothing we can do, lady. Because two guys with not under duress, both of whom met of their own free will with weapons that they selected under no pressure from anybody, then shot and killed one another. There's nothing the law can do. It's like, wow, that is a really, really narrow definition of the situation in which it's okay to shoot somebody. Yeah. I don't know if that was ever...
The law never steps in.
Never.
This one especially, there's no sheriff. I don't think we ever see a sheriff in this movie.
Nope.
I think in the other two we did, and they were like ineffectual or whatever.
But we do have a courtroom scene.
Yes,
with an ineffectual judge.
So before we get to that, there's a bit of... I want to talk about how after we get the crime spree and the explosions, this movie has a weird shifts in tone, like where suddenly you'll cut and you get this goofy, like cheesy music. And this Ryder, as I said, they smile more and more. In this one, particularly, Jim Bannon, he's laughing, smiling, happy all the time, and there's terror going on around town. Like, people are dying all over the place, and he seems to be up for a smile and a joke. It's very odd. So yeah, we do get a court thing because they come up with this
another one of his schemes. One of Ryder's schemes which collapses because
so many schemes.
He's not canny enough. You see, because I think here it's a bit like Bertie Wooster and Jeeves. It's the intelligent one that's vaguely sinister.
Right.
To be a bit... Cleverness is not really trustworthy. A truly good person is not very clever. Just big-hearted and a good shot. So Red Ryder has this plan where he's going to trick Frenchie into thinking they've published something libelous. Frenchie will charge to the newspaper officers for a copy of the paper, but they give him a fake copy, essentially. It's what they call the editorial copy.
Yeah.
This is all revealed later in the courtroom. So this is a scheme that could have gone wrong. What if Frenchie had not gone
Yeah, what if he hadn't attacked... Oh, the whole thing is based on them attacking attacking coonskin or buckskin in this one.
The plan is that, because they want to ding him for theft and assault, because they know that he'll go to the newspaper offices and take a paper by force. But that's relying on the fact that Frenchie doesn't go and ask someone else for a paper. These papers are all through the town, because it's part of the plan, because Red Ryder needs to be able to tell the judge that everyone in town knows that they didn't print the libel, and that the copy Frenchie saw was actually a pre-publication one, which they had discarded for being inappropriate. It could have gone wrong 100 ways. It does go wrong anyway, because Ryder's plan is to do a countersuit, I suppose, to have the idea
yes, to say that the bad guy attacked Buckskin. The whole plan is the bad guy attacked Buckskin,
it's not how
and we're going to charge him. No, you can't charge him while you're in court. But also, that's what would happen. It ended up that the thug, the henchman, was the one that actually assaulted
and Buckskin's too dumb to say.
Also, Red Ryder was too dumb to elaborate their stories before they went into court.
To get them, that's right. To get their stories straight, they don't. And the judge is dumb. You know, we get this sequence, which again, I guess is supposed to be funny, where the judge says he can't read Latin and doesn't understand jurisprudence. He's only interested in facts or something stupid. And, you know, again, you can't trust authority. Authority is at best incompetent, at worst out to get you. And the only thing you can trust is a good-hearted man with a gun. So that doesn't work. And then Red Ryder decides the only way he's going to get rid of Frenchie... Why does he want to get rid of... Oh, yeah. He's promised newspaper lady that he'll deal with Frenchie because he killed her brother, even though it was all done legally. He decides the only way they're going to solve it is for him to challenge Frenchie to a duel, which he does. Frenchie always provides the pistols. Not at all suspicious.
I actually thought there was going to be something going on with the tree, because he always goes to that one particular tree. I thought there was going to be a guy hiding in the tree with a gun or something. I thought there was going to be some scheme, because then he digs a bullet out of the tree and he's like, aha, or something.
Yeah, okay, waiting. What, is there something about the bullets? No, the bullets were just in the tree. But I guess it's that the bullets shouldn't... Where the bullets are in the tree, because it's a very big tree, is quite far to...
Where he aimed.
Far from where he aimed.
Yeah.
So that's when he knows there's something wrong with the guns.
Yeah.
And that Frenchie has trained himself to shoot 3 feet to the left.
Yeah.
Because the guns have been misaligned.
Yeah, so he challenges Frenchie to a duel. They have a duel and he fails, but he's just grazed, luckily.
Frenchie loses his nerve because Red's so handsome. Something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. But then, so he challenges him to a second duel just to see the guns again, and then he pulls out the gun and he proves that it doesn't shoot straight.
Except none of it makes sense. It just doesn't... He shoots... Yeah, he proves it by shooting at beer mugs on a lintel.
Yeah.
And he says, haha, I missed. That proves these guns are dodgy. It's like, well, what if... This is a hostile audience.
Yeah, exactly.
Why are they going to believe you when you say that you are shooting true? But luckily, maybe it's enough for Frenchie to lose his cool. And then we have the lamest punch-on.
Yeah. They're all very long. They're long and boring.
This one's particularly bad.
Yeah.
And then Frenchie is dragged away by Red. Red says he's going to hang for manslaughter.
Yes.
There's no... Red Ryder just drags him away. As you said, there's no sheriff.
No.
And then the final scene is...
It's a laugh-up.
Yeah. The front page is...
finale.
Frenchie convicted of manslaughter, I guess by a reliable judge. There's always... Yeah. And then we have the slapstick sequence where the Duchess pulls a gun on Buckskin, etc., etc.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Okay, I think we've covered it. Did you have any trivia?
I don't have a lot of trivia.
Fun facts or anything?
I don't have a lot of trivia. This is apparently pretty big in Spanish-speaking area.
Weird. Okay, interesting.
This one, when this was still being published, and I think up to the present day, was often selling better in Spanish-speaking areas than it was in English.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, very popular, presumably in Latin America.
Right. Okay.
What else? Schlesinger, among his many, many avenues of promotion, built ranches. 2 ranches, one called Little Beaver, one called Red Ryder, which he would run as tourist traps. And at least one of the proposed TV shows was shot at one of those ranches.
Yeah.
After watching 3 Red Ryder films, I feel like I'm an expert now on the formula. Okay. So I have here a classic Red Ryder adventure.
Okay.
This is the formula.
Okay, I love this. Go for it.
First of all, an innocent is being troubled by outlaws and/or crooked lawmen.
An innocent in a stagecoach.
Yeah, usually. Yeah, that's right. Innocent in a stagecoach. Next, an insufficiently rugged man tries to resolve the situation
Okay.
and dies.
Yeah.
Red Ryder shows up and tries to resolve things with a scheme, but is foiled by crooked lawmen, proving that all authority is inherently untrustworthy.
Yeah.
And finally, Red Ryder solves the issue with gumption.
Yeah, interesting that as you mentioned before, he didn't need to be talked into this in some way,
No.
and also Little Beaver didn't need to help or be there, and Gabby didn't need to be there. Duchess didn't need to be there.
We don't have time in this to see Red Ryder's more like a wandering vigilante in these movies. We don't have time to have him on his ranch or whatever.
Yeah, there's actually a line in the comic, in probably the second or third Sunday, where he says, following the tumbleweed has been my trail. Is what he says. So he seems like more of like a wanderer, like the man with no name.
Yeah. Yes.
But he doesn't really act that way necessarily.
No, he's just... Yeah, he
in
just
the comics,
wanders around.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not a bounty hunter or someone that makes his... He's not really a gunslinger.
We don't even... Actually, from those Sundays, we don't know who he is at all.
Yeah.
It's just the first panel, he sees Little Beaver's father trying to tame that horse. And that's it. We don't have no background on this character whatsoever.
He's almost like a costume superhero because he's always... Another thing is he's always in costume. He's always got his red shirt and chaps. Which have an R on them.
Yes.
His chaps have an R.
Yeah, right.
And, he's always wearing these chaps in inappropriate places. Like, he'll be in a saloon having a drink of whiskey. Everyone else is wearing a suit or something.
I would say the thing that I noticed was in the movies, he's very clean. Like, he's not covered in sand or dirt.
Yeah.
Even after fights, his outfit looks very clean and untarnished in any way. It was weird to me to not see him covered in dust, at least in the chases or something like that.
This is pre-Sergio Leone.
Oh, yeah.
Pre-realism.
Oh, yeah.
He's essentially kind of like the Shadow or someone wandering around.
Yes. Yeah.
Solving crime.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of the 4 stages of a Red Ryder film, and in between those 4 stages, you need to insert all of the following. You need frenetic horse riding, shooting guns out of hands,
the
lamest fist fight, racism, and lots of bullets and smoke.
Yeah, I will say the racism in the movies is
it's pretty tame.
Incidental. Yeah. Like, it's just because Little Beaver is there and speaking in that stupid way.
It's Little Beaver
in the comics it's worse because he's
always saying lazy Indians. And...
Well, not only that, like they meet this like Chinese cook at one stage and it's not good.
Yeah.
And they meet some Mexicans at one stage. It's not good.
Yeah. I just don't think
it's pretty rough. They come off worse than Little Beaver, yeah.
Yes, I completely agree. The comic was much more racist. In the film, it's just basically Little Beaver with his me catch 'em.
Yeah,
but I'll just briefly mention that no one's reloading. Everyone's shooting about 100 bullets a minute.
Yeah. Was there a sequence of... No, it was in the comic there was some reloading where Beth and Duchess are trying to protect their holdup in her ranch. And it's just those two, and she's getting Beth to reload for her.
Right, fair enough. Well, I guess you can do that in the comic. But
Beth, again, that's another incident example of Beth being really cool in the Duchess being really cool in the comics.
But they know what they want. They know what their audience wants, and what their audience wants is horse flesh and guns going off 10 times a second.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, shall we do our votes?
Yeah, sure. So the comic, I'm gonna give it an A, but there was stuff I liked about it. Like I like the horses. I like the landscapes. I mean, overall, it's inoffensive. It is offensive.
Yeah,
but
I understand. Yeah. I'm also a nay. Okay. I can't vote Lady of Versailles nay and then vote this one yay.
Yeah, no.
Even if, but also I just didn't. Yeah, it's very formulaic.
Yeah.
Not particularly interesting.
Yes.
And as you say, it's a little bit on the nose by modern standards.
Yeah, oh, by the way, you didn't have to put up, since you didn't read the Sundays, at the bottom of the Sundays he had a footer, not a topper, but a bottomer, which was a gag strip just featuring Little Beaver. And they were so dire. You have no idea how unfunny and terrible these comics were.
Well, there you go. Double nay then from them.
They were really hard work. Yeah. These movies.
No. These are crimes against nature, these movies.
Yeah. Was there anything really good? They didn't get... You know what? They didn't... No, I can't recommend them at all. And again, from our perspective, it's hard looking back to look at from the post-deconstructionist era, to look back at that stuff and look at it with a straight face.
I mean, some of the horse riding's pretty good.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's like in the comic. Like, the comic has nicely drawn horses, but it's not...
this is a time when these films are almost like television.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean,
much like Blondie was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sort of just prefigures what's going to happen with television, where these formulaic shows, you just throw them out. They're almost like soap operas or sitcoms.
Yeah.
That you're just throwing them out, often one per week.
Yeah, and using the same actors in different roles,
That's
which
it.
would happen in TV as well. Yeah. Yeah.
So, no.
Yeah. Okay, adaptation.
I think this is perfect adaptation.
I'm not so sure. I'm actually going to go nay.
All right, you go first.
Because I don't think they captured Ryder's personality, the thing where he's so dumb about dares and being called yellow. And I don't think they got Duchess, who was my favorite character that I really enjoyed in the comic. I think they tried 3 different actresses and none of them were scripted right for her. I think Little Beaver's more helpful in the comic. I think they don't know quite what to do with him in the movies. So I'm actually going to say they've actually shifted into even more generic in some way. Like there are elements of the Red Ryder comic strip which are particular to that strip, those particular characters, let's say. And I think they've left it up. The fact that we've got 3 different Gabbies with different names, Gabby, Coonskin, Buckskin, that's telling. It's just like, it's beyond generic. It's just like paint by numbers kind of Western stuff. There's nothing specific Red Ryder in here, I think.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm saying yay.
Okay.
I think it is. I think this adapts a strip.
Yeah.
Kind of like a long-running strip that really is often, on a weekly basis, just going through the motions.
Yeah.
How to get Ryder from one crisis to another. With a cast... what you've described, this idea of interchangeable characters, I think that describes the strip. I mean, Red Ryder just kind of blunders from event to event and runs into cookie cutter.
Yes, but this is that's also part of the reason I'm going nay.
The prospector
is because in the comic it's just one thing and the next, and it's straightforward. But as we mentioned again and again, these movies are very complicated. They have complicated plots.
That's true.
Which is not how the comic strip functions. The comic strip is very ordinary in terms of plotting. It's this thing happens and the next thing happens. There's rarely any twists or turns or surprises or here's a very elaborate scheme or plot involving somebody pretending to be somebody else or, all that kind of stuff that either Red or the bad guys are doing in all 3 of these
That
movies.
is a really good point because the comics are quite easy to follow and the films are the total opposite. I'm going to stand by my yay, but I concede that that's an excellent point.
Okay.
But I just feel like if you had to stick a kind of rambling, formulaic comic strip on screen, I feel like kind of this is sort of what it looks like.
Yeah, I think that's true as well. Okay, so please like, rate, review, subscribe.
Bam.
Join us on Facebook. Please join
us on Facebook.
Our Facebook, please, please. It's fun. Our Facebook page is fun.
We're on it all the time.
Yes. And, Patreon, so getting on the Patreon. And next week, so to balance out the holiness of Christmas, we're going to go to Hellboy.
Yeah.
What year did that come out, that first one? 2008 maybe?
2000.
Or earlier?
I think it might be 2004.
Okay, so the
very first one, the Ron Perlman one? 2004, I think.
Okay, so we'll look at that and we'll read maybe the first 2 Hellboy books.
Red Hand of Doom.
Oh, and we'll definitely read the Corpse and the Iron Shoes, that short story, because they incorporate that into that movie. And maybe the second book as well. I can't remember how close it is to the movie. But we're maybe going to do all 3 current Hellboy movies in a row.
Stay tuned to figure out if we do.
Yeah.